This podcast represents the opinions of Katie Allen, PA, and guests of her show. The content is for informational purposes only and in no way sets up a patient relationship. Consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Now, here's Katie Allen.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Make Me Pretty podcast. I'm your host, Katie Allen. I've been a PA in plastic surgery for almost 2 decades. Yikes. And today we have Shanice Linton with us with Visual Vybz Studios. She is a creative content marketing strategist. She's worked with so many other people, and then I've gotten the joy to work with her more recently, and it has been awesome to see all the things that she's involved with. I've seen her speak at several of the national plastic surgery meetings, but also most recently I saw her at the global aesthetic meeting, which was amazing to see you doing that. I didn't know she was going to be doing that part. I was very impressed. But today we have her here, thankfully, to discuss all things really when it comes to content creation, especially when it has to do with this world of aesthetics and the pressure that we all have under the aesthetics market. So how are you today, Shanice?
I'm doing good. Thank you for that introduction, Katie. So as we talked in our previous episode, a little bit more on the more technical side, camera tips, tricks, techniques. Today we want to talk a little bit more on that psychological side, removing some of those blocks that are kind of preventing us from being more confident on camera.
Because it's hard to even get to the physical aspect of even pushing the record button and figure out all the details of the techie part of things until we have that mind part addressed. I know we talked in a previous episode about some of the fear and things like that, but I feel like a lot of us, it's really trying to step beyond that critic in our mind. How do we do that? How do we get over that portion of things?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes from being in one of the most beautiful industries in the world.
The pressure.
There's a lot of pressure there, comparing yourselves to other injectors and providers that are essentially doing it well on social media. They have a large following. They're doing all the things, whether it's dancing.
It sure does at least look like they're doing all the things too. Yes. Yes.
And then I'm sure even having balance in that with your work, you are seeing patients. Yeah. I'm sure a big question on your mind is like, how do they have the time to even create this content?
You just hit on something huge, and I know a lot of you feel like this. I will admit to you, I felt a little anxiety hit over the last probably, I'd say, year or so, that there are some folks out there who are creating so much content, and I know a lot of us out there are feeling the same. We've got to study our craft. We need to study anatomy, keep up with anatomy. We need to keep up with the trends are continuously just learning for our patient's sake. And then on top of that, now we need to learn what's relevant on social media. If it's trendy, I'm in trouble half the time anyway. And then we need to do it and look good while we're doing it because we're promoting ourselves in an aesthetic industry. Mm-hmm. But the other question is who is our audience? Is our audience our patients? Is our audience companies? Is our audience even other injectors in the industry?
I think that brings up a good point because in dealing with clients that are specifically in this industry, most of them will come to me and they will come with ideas and content that they want us to create. But at the end of the day, I will ask them, who's your audience? Because a lot of these ideas are geared towards other injectors. So then it feels like now you're competing with these injectors where you're supposed to be focused on your patients.
Right.
And because of that, it creates this overwhelm towards and kind of fear of going on camera because you're thinking, what are my peers going to think about this post? And you start comparing yourself.
Some of you have some incredible content out there that just looks fairly flawless. And my mind starts to create a pressure that I didn't actually feel originally. Mm-hmm. But now I've started to put on myself. I'm obviously letting it go. but there's definitely, again, a pressure to create good content. And then back to who is our audience. If I want to keep it on, I don't want to say elementary terms because so many of my patients know so much because of the internet and information that's so easy to access. But I want to keep it on the terms that I can convey information to my patients. And that does look different than if I'm trying to impress other injectors.
And I think that removes a lot of the pressure when you stop thinking about what your peers and your other injectors or how will they perceive my content and focus on how will my patient perceive the content. It feels a lot less stressful and overwhelming when you look at it from that angle. So kind of shifting your perspective is a huge element of boosting that confidence and that willingness to get on camera and let that personality shine and bring value to that ideal audience.
So I hear you saying a lot about us being our authentic selves, and that I think comes across in the camera. Some of my authentic self, I want you to see. Some of it I go, well, it is what it is. But that's the thing that I think I'm hearing you say through everything, because it's our own internal critic is there and can really beat ourselves up. Is this good enough to put out there? Or are we comparing it to what? Who are we comparing it to? My dance moves are not worth putting on there. And I have a bit of a silly side. So I don't mind if you guys see some of that part, because that's who I am. But I also want to make sure, and I've told you this before, I want to convey that I'm very serious when it comes to your safety, your health, the importance of me gathering information. What are some different ways we can be authentic on camera? Be ourselves.
Yeah. I think just letting those walls down, again, not trying to do what your peers are doing, but focus on your personality and what you would do off camera. If you're a bubbly, energetic person in the room with your patient, that's who they're going to want to see, because that's who they're being treated with, that type of warm energy. If you're a little bit more reserved and quiet, like I'm very reserved and quiet, and for a long time I thought I had to be bubbly and extroverted, but then I realized after speaking with my clients that they actually like that softness about me, and because of that I'm trying to just be myself and be soft. So whatever it is that reflects your true authentic personality, let that shine on camera. Because if you do the opposite and pretend to be something you're not, people can see that. And it is disappointing when they see this bubbly person and then they go in office and you're not that in person. So it does feel a little misleading and they tend to lose trust with you.
You just nailed it, because I was thinking, if I show a version of myself to you on camera, and then any of you come and see me, and now you've seen this other portion, and I don't appear to be that same person. Well, everything that I do, I know is based on trust. First, eventually you got to see the work. But if I've missold myself, for lack of a better term, then it looks like I'm disingenuous.
Yeah.
And I could see where that would kind of make us think, well, who is this person? That is not who I met on there.
Yeah.
I can be soft and I can be a little quiet, but not in general. So I could see where if I portrayed myself a certain way and then you came into my office and I said, hey, how are you? It could be a little startling.
Yeah. And I think as a patient who potentially saw you on camera being this warm, energetic, bubbly person, then coming into the treatment room and you have low energy and the complete opposite, I would think, did I do something to offend her?
Right.
Why is she not being herself?
Right.
I would personally feel very uncomfortable being in that space with you, and I probably wouldn't want to go back because I would think that I did something wrong for you to have that energy around me, or I would feel as if you're not authentic.
Right. Which goes back to the trust thing. I know saying earlier, I think there's so many injectors that are out there. There's so many people in the world of aesthetics, even the estheticians, surgeons, all that are involved, that you really can choose the person that fits you the best. Shanice, the aesthetic industry is highly competitive, I would say at this point. It has become more so in the last several years. How do you think we as providers should differentiate ourselves?
So we talked about letting your personality shine through, but another key element here is storytelling. So focusing on your story, because there is a patient out there for everyone, and we all connect to stories in different ways. So if you're a mom and you've had your struggle in med school, getting up to where you are as business owner, whatever it is, there's someone out there who connects to that story in some way, and that is the best way to differentiate yourself in such a competitive market is to use storytelling to your advantage. And that also screams authentic.
Yes.
When people see this honest and raw content online, not too raw, obviously, but they can connect with that.
Sometimes mine is a little too open.
Can connect in a very authentic way. And we were just having coffee earlier, and Katie and I were sharing some very relatable and honest stories. And I just realized how much we have in common. We have
It's a comfortable space to do it too.
Yeah. We have very similar outlooks on life. We have very similar stories in terms of our drive for success and so on. And I think just being authentic in a comfortable environment is a very good, authentic way to connect with your ideal audience.
But the stories, by us sharing, and that makes sense, by us sharing with each other, that probably helped to kind of put down the wall a little bit, soften the walls, so that we were able to share more. And then that helped us get to that spot. So I can understand where that would be the same with patients, and maybe a relatability as well in the stories.
Yeah. And when your patients come into the treatment room, something that you typically ask them, I'd imagine, is what brings you in today? And then they usually have a story attached with that. Well, I've been struggling with acne for years, or my husband doesn't find me attractive anymore because of my wrinkles, or whatever it is. You can all relate to these stories, and them letting their walls down for you. It's good to kind of reflect that and kind of bounce that energy back onto them by also being authentic with them and sharing that story. And that will help build trust with your patients as well. So just being authentic back with them is a nice little...
That is nice, because if we're able to share with our patients, it does help, because me hearing patient stories is what helps me understand what our goals are and what brought them in that day, which is really nice that you kind of put that in, because it is true that helps me know.
They are making themselves vulnerable even coming in to see you. So just reflecting that energy and just giving them your story to show that you're not this perfect person that's gonna...
Totally true.
I think that's a good way. And another thing we kind of talked about as well is being our own cheerleader, but also having cheerleaders that will make you feel more confident. So whether that's your peers or your family members, friends, but kind of having that support person to kind of give you that little push or make you feel a little bit more confident on camera. Have that person in the room while you're shooting.
That's a good point.
Let them be a good, positive critic.
I think I told you this earlier in our discussion over coffee, which is always interesting when we get to that candid spot, which allows to me some vulnerability, is I have difficulty sometimes trusting folks to tell me, not just always trusting, but having folks trusting to tell me the truth, whether it's an intimidation to tell me or something else. I want to know that if you come in, I know that if I stand in a certain light, you're going to tell me. If that wording could be done better, you're going to say, scratch that. Or you're okay with saying, you know what, this could be said a little bit more eloquently, but Katie's showing herself in that moment. I'm going to leave that part in, and that's okay. But when you're giving an approval, I trust you that is okay. There are many people that especially here in the South, I don't know where you're all located, but especially here in the South, where it's, oh yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's good. Oh, that's nice. But is that an authentic answer? Is it really good? Can I correct it? I don't want to just be told something's good. I want to be better at it. And so having people again around who I trust their advice, their direction.
Yeah, so just having that element of support is very important in making you feel confident on camera and help you push out more content as well.
So we talked a little bit about the internal critic, but there's also critics, and you know who you are, that are out there in the world. And it's hard, I think, for a lot of folks to ignore those critics. I say I'm in my 40s. It's gotten a little easier to ignore those critics. I'm probably a little harder with my own self-critic. Apparently by the time I get to my 50s, maybe it'll get better, that I can't hear anyone anymore. But in all reality, there's some definite critics out there. And even though we might all have different content, to me, I have a lot of respect for anybody who gets behind a camera. I mean, we may all like different things. We may have a different set of opinions. You do you is a little okay to me. I can say that's not exactly what I'm going to do. But again, my feeling is you have the ability to get in front of the camera, you're taking that risk. It is definitely a feeling of exposure, I would say, when we get in front of the camera. Again, because it's also now on the internet for a period of time. But that the critic, again, with the other people, how do you think people can cut out the noise of whether it's other people in the aesthetic industry? Because it is a tough industry. What do you think? What's your personal thinking?
So personally, for me, something that I try to do less of is scrolling on social media and looking at my peers. And for me, that would be in the marketing space.
Yeah.
Because when you see them creating content, and yes, it's good to get inspired every now and then, but if you're constantly overwhelming yourself with their content and seeing how they're doing things, you're setting a very high bar for yourself, and at some point you're going to want to replicate what they're doing.
That's a good point, because then everybody just starts looking similar and there is no differentiation, which would not be great.
And I know it's hard too with just social media being such a big thing. Like, how do you drown out the noise? But the best thing is to just detach from it, go for a walk, something, I don't know, just distract yourself from what they're doing on social, so that when you are ready to create your content, you're not comparing yourself so often to what your fellow peers are doing, and you're a little bit more focused on your own story and strategy and
because you guys know, in this market, the bars are set high on what offices look like, on what people look like, how well people are dressed, what the hair is like. Sometimes I'm sure any of you with young kids, I don't have them, but any of you with young kids, sometimes it's just a big deal that you showered that day and got to work. And I know you might be in this industry and we expect better, but it is real. So I say that because I think we can be at different seasons, but this industry expects people in general to arrive for hair to be done, for makeup to be on, for the clothing to be relevant or stylish or whatever, for the car that you're driving to look a certain way, for the photos. It's very common that a lot of us post some of our personal content as well. But there's definitely a pressure there. And you've really put a lot of stress today to me on being authentic. And I think sometimes in our real places, working a lot, when we're putting in a lot of hours and we're trying to make things work, we just have to come to that space where we're okay and we're confident with where we are right now. But that comparison part, it is not just the young people that have difficulty with that, but it can be everyone a little bit. But accepting maybe where we are in our own space right now.
Yeah, and definitely doing what works for you as well. And I'll just give a little personal story for me. As a marketer, I don't post as frequently as I should, comparing myself to peers. But posting on social media is not something that is very effective for me particularly, because I get a lot of my leads through my blog or events and things like that. So someone might look at my content and say, why isn't she posting as often as she should? But I know what works for me, and I'm not comparing myself to my peers and what they're doing, which probably works for them. I'm in my lane doing my own little thing, and it's pretty effective on my side. So maybe just finding, whether it's a podcast or a blog or Instagram. Some people, they're great on TikTok and Instagram, but they're horrible on their website or whatever it is. But just finding...
I don't know how some people have the time to do it all. That's what I've said to you. How do you have time to take care of your patients, to learn new information, to go, some of us do talks at different places, to keep up with the trends of what's going on, and then post on all these different social media platforms or all the things that are out there. I don't know how some of you do it. Also, what is my point to it, or my audience? What improves?
Well, you have a good point about what is your audience.
Yeah.
Because if your audience they don't live on Instagram. If they don't live on Instagram, why are you posting content there?
Right.
Why are you posting 5 reels a day when that's not your ideal customer? Your ideal customer is ages 50 to 70.
Right.
Like that person lives on Facebook or their email or whatever it is. You need to figure out who your audience is and deliver content that is comfortable and not overwhelming for you. Like, being on several different platforms is going to deter you from creating content in the first place, because that's a lot of stress.
Yes, it will.
So just kind of figuring that out and kind of stick it in an area or a lane that makes sense for you and your business.
Which that does make sense. I know for me, if I'm on social media, part of if I really get real about it, I went on there partially years ago because all of a sudden I started hearing about it, and it was really because the situation that I had outside of there wasn't going so smoothly, and I thought I gotta make sure that people see content and can find me. Mm-hmm. But I really wanted to educate patients on things. I am busy at work. I stay so busy, but it's all word of mouth. I appreciate my patients greatly. It doesn't really behoove me to impress other injectors. Not when we really get down to it. Now, all of you, I don't mind if you are impressed. But it's not really about that. No, people really want to see the before and afters. It is a big deal, but it's not as big of a deal in my practice as it is in many, and I respect that it is in so many places. I'm more concerned about putting a photo up that looks inauthentic, that shows an after picture that isn't true of what it is. And I really spend more time on treating individual patients than I do on the marketing and what other people view it as. Again, I need you to look good when you go out to your friends, and then your friends say, I don't know why you look so good. What did you do? And then maybe eventually you'll secretively tell some of them, and then that's what keeps you so busy. But there is a difference there on who I'm trying to impress or...
Yeah. And that brings up a good point for referral marketing, because that is one of the biggest lead generation strategies in the healthcare and aesthetic space. So you're more focused on the patient experience and making sure that it's so good that they're going to refer their friends to come back. So you're not even hyper focused on social media because that's what works for you. Right. And that's kind of the key, is to figure out where do you get most of your customers from. Right. And zero in on that.
That's strategy. That's a good point. Because if it's not on social media, why are you spending so much time on it?
Because your peers are doing it, so you think you have to do that. But
what is that about? What is that about? Like an internal pressure to do something that might not even be important. and then you get into the multiple platforms where somebody will say you've really got to do this thing. I know TikTok, y'all know I got an account. It's under there, Katie Allen PA, but it's just not... For me, I just haven't ever joined in. It's not that I don't think it's important. I heard lots of marketing folks saying it's the new thing when it was first starting, you got to do it. I just couldn't find myself, the time or the energy to place into that thing, because I was already focusing so much other directions and into patients themselves, and also into the things that bring me joy. There are things that suck the energy out of me. I love talking to folks. I love educating people. If somebody asks me what my why is, it's probably people. But when it comes to anything techie, I end up going down these rabbit holes of information on YouTube trying to figure out how to do something. But it really sucks the joy right out of me when I'm trying to do, again, the techie stuff. So I think the part that's important there is figuring out where our patients live. What space do they live in? Whether it's age-related, what their interests are, what information they would like to know is what's really important. Because if we're not conveying that to our patients or to the audience at hand, then we're missing it. For myself, when it comes to social media or the internet or any really space that I'm in, my focus is on my patients, but it is on a group of folks where I do some talks outside of work. And it's really, usually most of the topics have been on feeling good naked. So my audience, the niche, if you say, is in ladies primarily that are 40 and above. That can come across a little differently in my content. It is typically my target audience, although I have plenty of folks that I inject that are ranging from 20 to 86, I think I have somebody right now. So there's such a big range when it comes to my patients, but I do some content that is focused primarily on these speaking conversations that I have about feeling good after 40, because I say I want you to feel fucking fabulous after 40. It's the point of I want everybody to both strut in the room with confidence, even if there's plenty of critics that are around. Mm-hmm. But that is what I like to focus on as well. So it's back to what you were saying, is figuring out what our audience is. What is the point to the content? Where should we be spending our time?
Yeah, patient experience is extremely important. So you use it as a patient attraction tool to make sure that they're referring people out. But also, if social media is working for you and you're using that as your main patient attraction tool, once you have your patients come into your office, if you're not giving them an amazing patient experience, they're not going to refer you out. So it is a two-part strategy.
That's a good point.
For people who are a little bit more focused on social media and online marketing efforts, to make sure that when those patients do come in through your door, they had such an incredible experience, great results, and they're going to want to refer you out.
Amen to that. That's a great point. Because in the end, you can have a great marketing team that you hire. You can show these results online. But if you come in and the person is not delivering on that to each patient or that experience, then why would somebody come back?
Exactly.
Shanice, what would you say is a summary to all the things that we were covering here? And I think this has all, again, been so helpful. And I do appreciate your time. I know so many other people are going to benefit from you as well. But what do you think, again, would summarize things for us?
Yeah, definitely just let your walls down and let your personality shine through. Focus on your story, because at the end of the day, people are going to connect, the right people are going to connect with your story. And those are the ones that you want coming through your door. Don't compare yourselves to others. Ultimately, just be authentically you.
Just the best way we can be, in the way that I know to be the best. Thank you guys for joining us today. Thank you, Shanice, for coming by. I feel so privileged to have gotten to meet with you today. And we will see you, I get to at least see you again in the future on Make Me Pretty podcast, and hopefully we'll get Shanice back for more. If you want to follow her, I will have all of her information listed. If you also want to contact her through her business, you can do that as well. Again, thank you so much for your time, and we hope to see you all guys again in the future. Bye-bye.